that they weren't Muslim, they were taught to believe that that land belongs to the Palestinians. In fact, they don't call it Israel. So I remember one time I was talking to a family member, and this was upon my return from Israel the first time many years ago. This is back in the 90s. And I was telling him about my trip. I said, oh man, we just got back from Israel, and it was just amazing. And as I'm talking to him, I'm watching his whole countenance change. And the blood leaves his body. And he takes on this look, and he looks at me with a look that I cannot even put to words and describe. And he says to me, Israel? You mean Palestine? What I didn't realize was, to my Palestinian family member, that I had just said something that was anathema as far as they're concerned. Because you see, there can be Christian and there are Christian Arabs, but that does not necessarily mean that they are pro-Christian Arabs. And sadly, the same thing is true here in the United States of America. You've heard me talk about this before, but replacement theology is so pervasive now and so pronounced in the church today in the United States of America. What's replacement theology? It's the theology that believes that God is through with the Jew, and that now the church replaces the Jew as God's elect. And now we are entitled to all of the promises of the elect that Israel had forfeited in their disobedience. Now, I'm not going to go into detail. We've talked about this at length, but suffice it to say, God has an everlasting covenant with the Jews. And that's an Arab telling you that. But everlasting is, well, it lasts forever. So it's a covenant, and he has a covenant with us as well. So the bottom line is, God still has a plan for the Jew. And whenever I hear of something like this, where you have an Arab who is pro-Israel, and by the way, there's even a distinction between being pro-Israel and pro-Jew. I know that sounds crazy, but there is. But for the son of an organization, a terrorist organization like Hamas, to come to Jesus Christ, and then he's interviewed on Sean Hannity, and Hannity asks him the question that I've been asking for all these years. And I want you to listen to his response when asked by Sean Hannity if there was any difference between moderate Islam and fanatic Islam. Quote, "This is a big mistake comparing moderate Islam to the fanatics. This is not how we compare it. All Muslims, to me, are the same. At the end of the day, they believe in the God of the Quran, and they believe that the Quran is from that God." Listen to this. "Moderate Islam does not exist. Their God, the God of Islam, is a terrorist and ignorant." Okay. In another interview, he had this to say about Islam being a religion of peace. Quote, "It is not a religion of peace. The biggest terrorist is the God of the Quran. I know this is very dangerous and this will offend many people. The more you follow the steps of the Prophet of Islam and the God of Islam, the more you get close to being a terrorist." You know, after 9/11, I had the privilege of serving on Franklin Graham's executive board for a crusade, or they call them festivals, that he had done while I was pastoring on the mainland. And I got a chance to talk with him. Very humble man, very down to earth, very gracious man. We had a luncheon, and I had the privilege of personally thanking him for taking a stand, as unpopular as it was, after the events of 9/11, and calling Islam an evil religion. And, of course, the liberal media went crazy, demanding that he clarify and recant, because we were told that Islam is a peace-loving religion. So he clarified for NBC of all, and he says to them, "Islam is an evil religion." That's the clarification. It wasn't Lutherans that flew those planes into the World Trade Center. It wasn't, Methodists. It was Muslims. And these are not Muslims that have hijacked the Islamic religion. These are not fanatical or extremist Muslims. These are obedient Muslims. These are Muslims that are obeying the commands of the Quran. And it's like Musab says, they're one and the same. You cannot make the distinction. I found it interesting that Joel Rosenberg announced that Musab Hassan Yusuf will be speaking at the 2010 Epicenter Conference this summer. He says, quote, "Today it is my honor to announce that Musab Hassan Yusuf will address the 2010 conference this summer in Philadelphia. Musab will share the inside story of how he went from being the eldest son of one of the founders of the Hamas terrorist movement to a double agent working for the Israeli Secret Service to protect Jews and Arabs from terrorism. You'll hear firsthand how he made his stunning decision to renounce Islam and become a baptized follower of Jesus Christ, what it cost him, as well as his powerful vision for true peace and reconciliation in the epicenter. Note, for security reasons, Musab will not physically be on site at the Kimmel Performing Arts Center where the conference will be held. He will address the event either by videotape or by satellite." Exciting to see what God's going to do with this upcoming Epicenter conference. He has written a book called Son of Hamas, very powerful. But it just goes to show you, God loves Muslims. God loves Muslims. God loves the sons of terrorist organization founders that are terrorists. And when God gets a hold of somebody, he can change them. Aren't we studying about a terrorist? Not a Muslim terrorist, a Jewish terrorist. Yeah. Saul. He terrorized Christians and murdered them. He was a terrorist. And God got a hold of him and changed him from the inside out. And we have the Apostle Paul. Okay, why? Why do I, vehemently, dogmatically, adamantly, bring this up and talk about this? Well, if you haven't noticed, there are terrorists now, Muslims, there are Americans converting to Islam in our neighborhoods, in our backyards. I'm sure you heard about this Jihad Jane pictured here. This is a American, a woman who converted to Islam and actually became a terrorist and was arrested. And what's so frightening about this is that there are many like her. She just happens to be one that got caught. And the Jihad Janes are converting to Islam, and they are becoming terrorists right here in the United States of America. The sad fact of the matter is that Muslim terrorists are going to become more and more like you. They're going to look, not me anymore. So they're going to start profiling you when you go through the airports. They're going to look like the person you work with. Now, if I don't say something, then I will be guilty of acquiescing to the politically correct order of the day, and like all the rest say, quote, peace and security. Let me explain. You've heard the verse before, 1 Thessalonians 5:3-4. When people say there is peace and security, then sudden destruction will come upon them as travail comes upon a woman with child, and there will be no escape. Here's the bottom line. Our politically correct peace and security, saying that Islam is a peace-loving religion, will enable them to bring sudden destruction upon this nation as a woman in labor, and we will see Jihad Janes increasing with greater frequency and greater intensity as likened unto the labor pains.